Yo, Prime members, so check this out. We are here to talk about our favorite thing in the world, and that is Amazon Prime.
That's right. We all have different interests, but there's one thing that brings us together: Prime.
As members ourselves, we found ways to maximize our Prime benefits to get the most out of our passions.
From fast and free shipping, streaming of movies and music, and even exclusive deals and discounts, Prime has it all.
And what's great is that you can use all of these services to elevate your hobbies and interests.
Whether you're a bookworm, a fitness fanatic, or a gaming guru, Prime has something for everyone. I promise you that.
So go ahead, explore and indulge in all that Prime has to offer. We promise you won't be disappointed.
Time to get more out of whatever you're into. Prime. And that's that on that.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jemele Hill, and you are listening to the Success Playbook Podcast, available only on the Revolt Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? You are now listening to the Success Playbook Podcast, where we talk about pop culture, life and career success, and of course, we're going to talk about who got dunked on the night before. I'm your host, Chanel S. Reynolds, and I've been in the sports industry for several years. My goal is to take what I've learned from years of dominating the sports industry as a Black woman to help my listeners defy the odds and level up in life and career. Now, let's dig into this week's episode. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your favorite sports girl, Chanel S. Reynolds. In this week's episode of the Success Playbook Podcast, we have the privilege of sitting down with the iconic Jemele Hill. Join us as we delve into an inspiring conversation about her incredible life and career journey, where she's not only broken barriers, but redefined the game for women in sports and Black women in sports. We explore the fascinating twists and turns in Jemele's remarkable path, from her early days in journalism to her groundbreaking work that has made her a household name. Together on the show, we laugh, we learn, and we discover how a perceived failure to some actually was the ultimate setup for her current and extraordinary success. Tune in to hear the wisdom, humor, and insight of a true legend in the field as we explore Jemele Hill's story.
All right, so one thing I like to do with my guests is I like to play a little game of rapid fire.
Oh,
so
my favorite type of game.
Safe questions, of
Okay.
course, but I'm going to throw some.
Okay.
I'm going to throw some questions out there,
Okay.
and I want you to answer them.
All right.
Okay. So, podcasts or books?
Books. Yeah, I mean, I do love podcasts and getting a chance to intimately know people's stories, but, you know, books are my life, you know.
Yeah.
They really, they have such a deep meaning for me. I've been a voracious reader my whole life, so all about books.
Okay. What's one book that changed your life?
Oh, my gosh. It's so many. You know, early on, it was like, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Judy Blume. I used to love Judy Blume.
Okay.
Because she wrote about sort of young adults in a way that I could definitely relate to. Beverly Cleary, another one that was like an early young author, or an author who wrote for young people that I absolutely love. But probably the last book I read that shifted something inside of me is two books that come to mind. Viola Davis's memoir, which is incredible. It is, and I would encourage anybody to listen to the audiobook because she does it. Like her story is a testimony, and that's probably not even doing it justice. It's like, it's amazing this woman is even here, and it just makes me, I already had deep respect for her, but now it's just even deeper than that, the respect I have for Viola Davis. And I thought I grew up poor. She went through a level of poor that I was not familiar with.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's amazing to see how successful that she has become. She won a Grammy for it too, the audiobook, and I'm not surprised because it's very powerful. The other book I read is by an author named Ya Jesse, and the book is called Homecoming. And she traces, it's a historical fiction novel, and she traces this family from being put into slavery in Ghana, and kind of this family and the tentacles of this family, their entire journey to America, their life in America. And it not only puts into focus the irreparable damage of the transatlantic slave trade, but I think because she wrote it as a fiction novel, it gives it a level of empathy and compassion, and just you feeling it so personally. I mean, those are two books I can just recall off the top of my head that, like, I just felt something just move inside of me.
Yeah, I have to add those to my list.
Yeah,
okay.
They're phenomenal. And that, when you read it, reach out, because I'm like, you're
Yeah.
going to need somebody to discuss them with, because they're both really incredible.
I love that. Okay. What is your binge show specifically regarding Black 90s sitcoms?
Oh, so every night my husband and I watch Martin, like pretty much every night, because it's syndicated on like 7 channels, right?
Okay.
So it's hard to avoid. It's either Martin or the Jamie Foxx show. Like one or two we watch every night. But Martin, the rewatch is just so strong.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, I believe it was the last season or last 2 seasons when things got odd, when Tisha Campbell wasn't on the show.
Yeah.
It's so depressing when the syndication gets to the point where it's those
Yes.
seasons, because the highs were so high with Martin, and then for it to kind of end the way it did, it's just so unsatisfying. So now, like, when those seasons pop up, other than a few episodes, like, I won't even watch it. I'm like, it's just not, it's not the same.
I agree.
But Martin is definitely my constant, everyday Black TV sitcom binge.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What episode pops in your mind right now?
I mean,
or give us a one-liner.
The catfish is delicious. The Barnell Hill episode, it might be my favorite. It might be my favorite Martin
Love
episode.
it.
Maybe. Because Tommy Davidson is such a fool in this.
He
and
crushed that role.
And one of the best parts, as you know about watching Martin, is the cast. When you break the cast, that makes everything funnier.
Yes.
You know, like when Martin was recreating the Nino Brown
Yes.
thing, when the CD player came up missing. It's like watching the cast when he has this fake dog is like one of the best television moments ever. But yeah, Varnell Hill is like that's my one.
He crushed that role. I love it. Okay. What's on your workout playlist?
Well, I'm a Peloton head. So, you know, because they have the playlist. So, I mean, my favorite Peloton instructors are probably, because they have the fire playlist, is Tunde, Alex, Allie, Robin. Those are like my go-to 4.
Okay. What is this chapter of your life called?
I'm still in the Unbothered chapter. You know, that's why I named my podcast Jemele Hill is Unbothered, is that this was really a season for me to come into my own as an entrepreneur. And that was a season I did not expect. As somebody who's been in legacy media basically 90% of my career, you become accustomed and comfortable with working for somebody else, working for some big entity, like working for ESPN and some of the other places that I've worked for. And so once I pivoted out of ESPN, it felt like it was, you know, to borrow what Issa Rae says, me season, that like I had to really be focused on me in terms of me as a business. And I don't think I'd ever seen myself that way before. And when you do that, and especially coming off the experience I had at ESPN, it's like it really was helpful for me to go into every project, every alignment fearlessly. And so that's why I call it the season of me being unbothered. It's like I'm so beyond caring about what people think, how they perceive me to be, and all those other things. It's like, nah, it's just like really me season, where I'm just focused on, you know, my personal and professional growth.
How did you get to the point of like not caring?
You know, it's a process. You know, I get asked this question a lot, and I always tell people, because I think we feel as if, especially when we start fighting battles professionally, that we should have everything sort of figured out right away. Yeah. But it takes some scars. It takes some lessons, you know, as I just heard somebody say, lessons will be taught or bought. Okay. And it takes a while for you to understand kind of what your makeup is, because you have to wait till the challenges come. And then you're like, okay, so I'm this person when this shows up, and learning how to strategically pick your battles, especially in corporate America. So it was like an evolution. I think I've always had it inside of me, but as I became more successful, gained more leverage in my career, is when I really started to activate it differently at every stop. It's increased at every stop that I've been in. So now I feel like I'm at the height of my superpowers, if you will.
Okay, so what is your theme song right now? This chapter is called Unbothered, so what's your theme song?
Oh, man. Gosh, I'm trying to think. You know what? It's like a theme album, and it does fit. Okay. Janelle Monáe's Age of Pleasure. Right? Okay. Yeah, I'm on my champagne shit.
Okay.
About. And she has like this album. Like I listen to it front to back. Like this is no skips for me. Right. Okay. Float On, like all of that. And so that album just I mean, God, it'd be hard to say it's my favorite album of this year. It is definitely one of my favorites for sure. But of this quarter, it's my favorite album.
All right.
Yeah.
Love that.
Okay, let's keep it real. When I first graduated from my HBCU, I was in for a rude awakening. I thought I'd step right into my big break. However, that wasn't the case. I went on countless interviews and submitted countless applications and was met with consistent no's. Am I talking to you? Aren't you tired of submitting application after application and hearing nothing? Aren't you tired of getting the interview and hearing nothing back? Do you want to transition into sports but truly don't know how to? It's time to take charge and set yourself apart. I want to give you what I didn't have. Landing your dream job in the sports industry takes strategy. For the longest time, I didn't have it. It wasn't until I learned the game, no pun intended, that my first boss took a chance on me and hired me to join his team. In my journey to get my break into the sports industry, I didn't have a me. I didn't have anyone who was dedicated to my success. And to be honest, a solid mentor would have been amazing during my search process. Let me put you on to game. As your virtual mentor and sports bestie, I'm committed to your success. The All-Star Accelerator is a 6-week sports career course designed to help you strategically set yourself apart, get unstuck, and accelerate your start in your sports career. Graduates have landed positions at NFL teams, NBA teams, and so much more. With this program, you'll receive lifetime access to all pre-recorded courses. You'll receive community because y'all know how much I believe in networking. And you'll get a live class with your girl, me. Yes, on Zoom, you'll get to ask me whatever it is that you want to ask me. So I am looking forward to have you in class. Click the link and join the All-Star Accelerator program today.
All right, let's pivot into getting to know you a little bit more, your childhood. You're from Detroit.
I am.
Born and raised.
Yep. Real hood, not the rap hood.
Real hood.
Yeah.
Tell us about like your childhood, your upbringing. Who is Jemele?
So, growing up in Detroit, and we're talking about, because I'm 5,000 years old, we're talking about the 80s, right? So I grew up in the height of the crack epidemic.
Yeah.
And when all of that was just coming in the city. And, not that, unfortunately, Detroit was not a stranger to drug trafficking, but the intensity of it, like, really picked up during what was my coming of age. And the city was known really for its murder rate. A lot of people did not have a lot of positive things to say about Detroit. Of course, people knew that we were sort of the auto-making capital. But beyond that, I mean, it was considered a very dangerous city, a very deadly city, a city that wasn't deserving of people's hope and empathy. And it is why I think nobody puts on for Detroit harder than people from Detroit, because it was CMB, we all we got.
Yeah, like, y'all rep it hard.
Yeah. We rep it hard because, like, even though...
Yo, Prime members, so check this out. We are here to talk about our favorite thing in the world, and that is Amazon Prime.
That's right. We all have different interests, but there's one thing that brings us together: Prime.
As members ourselves, we found ways to maximize our Prime benefits to get the most out of our passions.
From fast and free shipping, streaming of movies and music, and even exclusive deals and discounts, Prime has it all.
And what's great is that you can use all of these services to elevate your hobbies and interests.
Whether you're a bookworm, a fitness fanatic, or a gaming guru, Prime has something for everyone. I promise you that.
So go ahead, explore and indulge in all that Prime has to offer. We promise you won't be disappointed.
Time to get more out of whatever you're into. Prime. And that's that on that.
Other major cities like Miami, New York, Chicago, LA, they have some of the same problems that we have.
Yeah.
But they have a pretty veneer to them that we don't have. Right? LA has Hollywood, which covers up a lot of the issues that go on there. Everybody loves, Chicago's downtown and the shopping there and, the food and all that. So they were kind of known as being a little more cosmopolitan. New York is New York, with theater and all these other things that gloss over the things that they have. And, Miami's a sexy city. And so, like, everybody always had something else that would cover up the things that they had. And we couldn't escape. It's like all our warts were out there for everybody to see. And people sort of treated us that way. And growing up, I think, with that layer of grit gave me a level of ambition and determination that I think was different, that allowed me to stand out and allowed me to pursue my dreams. So when I was young, I mean, I was very lucky in the fact that sports journalism was something I knew I wanted to do in high school.
Okay.
So I was one of those freaks that knew from the beginning, and that's all I've ever pursued since then, which gave me, and then it gave me an incredible step up to already know what I wanted to pursue. And, I wrote for my high school paper. I got involved in some journalism programs in high school that kind of paved my pathway in terms of actually having professional clips before I even got to Michigan State to study journalism, because I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. That was that was my entry point into sports journalism. I wanted to, my dream was to work at Sports Illustrated. Like ESPN was never on my radar. It was, I didn't want to do TV. I just wanted to write stories because writing is my first love. Yeah. And so, that's what I pursued. And it was, I say this all the time, and I tell people I'm not being dramatic when I say this, is that, journalism saved my life. And I say that because, like, both my parents are recovering drug addicts. They went through a lot of challenges when I was growing up, and having to deal with their addiction was very, I had to grow up fast, and because of that, I think that also gave me an additional incentive that, like, I knew that I did not want to make the same mistakes that they made. Yeah. And so I just sort of made sure that was at the forefront of everything I did. Is like, I can't make those same decisions that they made. And I tell people this all the time too. It's like my parents, they never married, and they were not together when I was born, and they went to their addictions at different times, but they never made their addiction seem cool. Like, they never made it seem like, oh, this is a path that you want to follow. They always were very honest about the destruction and the damage it was doing to their lives. And so I was never attracted to doing that. I just knew that I was going to work as hard as I needed to make sure that some of those same circumstances they found themselves in, that I was not in those.
So would you say that sports became like your escape, and that's how you kind of gravitated toward it? I
would say writing. And when we were talking about books earlier, books. Yeah. Books was my first escape. Okay. And so I read a lot as a kid because, that's the beauty of books, is like they open new worlds, possibilities, curiosities, and I love that. And I love losing myself in books. So, like, I live in LA now. This is the first city I've lived in. I haven't had a library card. COVID kind of slowed that down. I need to really get on that. But I believe in the public library. I believe in libraries, period. And so, because I spent so much time there as a kid, and it was a real saving grace. And that translated into me developing a love for writing. And those were my two saving graces. And because I did love sports, it's what made me read the newspaper. Yeah. Because that was then the only way you really could follow your local sports teams, is like you had to read the newspaper to figure out what was happening. And so it was like the combination of those three things is how I arrived at the fact that I wanted to be a sports writer for a living.
Nice. And it's funny how you discovered that early on. Yeah. Like,
I know it was really is you can only say it's nothing but God, because like I didn't know any sports writers.
I was about to say, was there somebody like you kind of looked up to?
No, there was nobody. Okay. And I just read the newspaper, and I enjoyed what I read. And I, like, of course, I saw the pictures of the people who were writing about sports, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, like, that they do this, that they write about this for a living. But there was just no really earthly reason I would have had this dream. And then it's one thing to have a dream, but to actually think you could do it, even though you don't see a single person that looks like you doing
diverse representation at that time.
No, not at all, And so it wasn't until the professional paper, Detroit has two professional papers, the Detroit News and Free Press. And in high school, I started working for the Free Press because I got accepted into a program that they had for Detroit area high school students. And I worked there one summer, and then they had another job. It was just a summer program, but I was able to extend my employment there because I applied for a position in the sports department to answer phones and take down high school scores. Because the way it was done then is that if a high school team played, then the coach would call the newspaper and say, hey, we just beat X high school, such and such, had 25 points, 10 rebounds. I take down all the information. I write up a paragraph on the game. Then it appears in the paper. So, nice. So I was doing that my junior and senior year, and so I got an opportunity to, write some stories and actually know what that felt like. So yeah, I've been a paid journalist since I was like 16 years old.
Wow, since high school.
Yeah, crazy.
So I love walking down memory lane with you. Let's pivot a little bit. Tell us about maybe a funny interaction that you've ever had with an athlete or celebrity.
Oh man, I've had a lot. I've had a lot. Luckily, and most of them have been good. And I came into the business at a good time because the battles of women being in the locker room had been fought and won, more importantly. And so while many locker rooms I went into, I was the only black person in there, the only woman in there, or the only black woman. One of the three, if not all three at once. Then even though it's still like an anomaly, it wasn't out of the blue. So like some of the horror stories that other women in the business told me about being in the locker room and interactions they had with athletes, that time, while it wasn't over, it was mostly gone. So I think that also was helpful in terms of like the types of interactions that I had. But you know, I mean, I've been cussed out by athletes before. I mean, it just comes with the territory. But I was fine. I wasn't cussed out because I was a woman. I was like cussed out because I was a reporter and they didn't like what I wrote. Like, it was fine, you know. So yeah, like generally my dealings have been, you know, really, really good. I'm trying to think of like a good like NBA story that, because I started covering the NBA when I was at the Free Press, and this was like in my mid-20s when the Pistons were good, and this is their last title run, which would have been early 2000s. And I remember Rasheed Wallace. Like, Rasheed Wallace, one of my favorite people ever. And he had developed this reputation where a lot of people in the media didn't like him because what some people didn't understand is that Rasheed just wasn't about the bullshit. Like, he just wasn't about it. You know what I'm saying? And he certainly had a us against them mentality when it came to the media because he had been written about negatively quite a bit. Some of it he deserved, some of it he did not deserve. And he just felt like the media didn't like give him like a really fair shake. But every time I came to cover the Pistons, he treated me great. Like, we got along super well, partly because he also, when he was in Portland and playing with the Trailblazers, he used to be an on-air DJ. So he used to, like, music was his thing. Like, he was super into music. And, I mean, very smart guy in general. And so he appreciated the fact that, one, whenever I talked to him, I didn't always ask him for a quote. And I tell younger journalists this, too, is that to build a rapport with athletes, you have to be around them when you don't always need something. Because then they know that they can trust you and you'll be fair, right? And so he and I would, like, get into these great conversations about music. I was one of the few reporters he would like talk to on a regular basis. And if he didn't feel like talking, he'd be like, "Oh, sis, I would talk to you, but I don't really want the rest of them around." I was like, "I get it, I understand." Or I'd be like, "I'll catch you in the tunnel," walking out. And so I always appreciated that sense of like sort of respect that we had. I mean, another athlete when I was in Orlando and was a columnist for the Sentinel, Keon Dooley, he and I, 90% of our conversations were about Young and the Restless. Like, I've been watching the Young and the Restless since I was...
That's funny.
It's true. I've been watching Young and the Restless since I was like 16 years old. And I don't know how we both discovered we watched Young and the Restless. So I would literally come into the locker room. He'd be like, "You see today's show?" I was like, Sharon was tripping. We would just like go in. I mean, be like, and just talk about it. And like those, when I think about, because now I don't really get to go in the locker rooms and I don't, cover a specific team. But when I think about what I miss about beat reporting, that's what I miss. It's like those inane, like funny debates and, crazy conversations that you have with athletes that people would never know. And so like, that's the part I miss. Those are the interactions, and then once I got on TV, like the interactions changed a little bit because at ESPN, I think because you're on ESPN, the athletes start considering you almost like their peers, which is odd because they look at you like, "Oh, you're just another celebrity. Like, I'm a celebrity, you're a celebrity." It's like, them zeros ain't the same. Ain't the same. You got a lot more zeros on your side than I do have on my side. But it would be funny because, when I would go to like the ESPYs or go to events and stuff, and it's like that, then you got a real sense about like who was watching the show. You're like, oh, they really watch. So as much as they like to get up in front of the media and claim they don't watch anything, I don't read any clips. I don't watch. They lying. Like you're a human being. Like if a lot of people are talking about you or people are talking about, you're going to pay attention to what they're saying. Right. And I heard Des Bryant took issue with something I said about him. I saw him at the ESPYs, and he was like, you cool and everything, but you ain't have to say that shit. I was like, okay. I was like, but this is why that was all, my policy was always, I'm never going to say something on TV that I cannot say to your face.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, if I can't say it to your face, then I don't need to say it on TV.
Yeah.
Right? If I got a duck when you come in the room, I don't need to say it. Right? And so I think they appreciate that sense of fairness.
Yeah.
So my interactions with athletes and coaches have always been really good.
It sounds super positive. I love that.
Each and every time I log into my LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, I am getting asked if I am offering mentorship. As much as I would love to connect with every single person, y'all, time will just not allow it. But I think I have the solve. Introducing The Locker Room. The Locker Room is the virtual cookout for current and aspiring sports professionals. In the program, you'll receive a community of like-minded individuals, networking, mentorship, and we'll even have some virtual happy hours. Y'all, I am on a mission to build the #1 community for current and aspiring Black professionals in sports, career enthusiasts, and sports and culture aficionados. Join The Locker Room today.
Let's talk a little bit about your career highlights. So this segment of my show is called Put Some Respect on My Name.
Ooh, okay.
So walk us through some of those like pivotal moments that you experienced in your career.
Well, I mean, getting a daily TV show at ESPN is not easy.
Yes.
And that is, well, I guess I'll go back before that because I certainly don't want to, I want to put some respect on my newspaper career.
Come on.
And so I got my first column when I was 28, and I was the only Black female sports columnist at a daily newspaper in North America. Notice I didn't just say the U.S.
Yeah.
North America, Canada, and Mexico too. I was the only one out of 405. And
That is so awesome.
but it's not. And the reason why it's not, because it's a very telling indictment about the business. I'm the only one. Like, I can write. I got takes, but I ain't that damn smart.
Yeah.
Where I'm the only one, you
Right.
know? And so it just was an unfortunate signal that the business still had not found a place for our voices. And we weren't regularly being put in those positions to be the voice of a newspaper in a big market or in a market period. Like, it just wasn't a lot of Black columnists at all. And particularly not at the size of paper that I was in Orlando. So,
But did your role open the door for others to come behind you?
you know, that's the other thing. I wish I could say that it did.
Okay.
Because I couldn't tell you how many Black women sports columnists at daily newspapers there are now. I honestly cannot think of one.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't mean that they're not one. I mean, if I'm wrong, I am happy to be wrong about this.
Yeah.
But I don't think there is one. And I made that same assumption, like, okay, hopefully there'll be more.
Yeah.
And there was a Black woman who replaced me for a while, but that's like, who replaced me in my job at the Orlando Sentinel, but it goes from 1 to 1. It's not even 2.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so then she took on, and she became the bearer of that unfortunate statistic. And, ESPN certainly, ESPN.com, they were in a position to be able to hire whoever they wanted. And so, they had a much more diverse writing staff than most other places. But, like, in daily newspapers, it was bad. And even now, it's not great.
Right.
I mean, it's not great at all. Oh, I do know one. Candace Buckner, Washington Post. Candace is a columnist, and she covers the NBA. So she's an NBA columnist. So a great writer as well. I think, that's the sad part, is like it didn't expand. Now with TV, it was different. Like I wouldn't necessarily put it on my impact in particular, but one thing that definitely changed at ESPN when I started having my daily show is that there was more women that were being put in a position to give their opinion, who were driving shows with their opinion. Like, we had certainly seen women as sideline reporters.
I will totally put that on your impact.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, we gonna put some
we
respect
gonna
on your
put some
name
respect
now.
on it. Okay. But we had seen women anchoring, and we've seen Black women anchoring. But then suddenly, like, we were out there with our opinions driving shows,
Yes.
and that was a major difference than how it was before. So I would say that was a pivotal moment, being a columnist in Orlando. And then once I started, like, with full throttle, started my television career, that was really something, because there was not a lot of Black women that were in that kind of role on daily television, being the role of like driving a show with your opinion. And so it started with Numbers Never Lie, which became His and Hers. And then next thing I know, I'm hosting the 6 o'clock SportsCenter, which again was not something that was in the vision board whatsoever. But it just meant a lot to be able to be in the same seat of like Robin Roberts and Stuart Scott and Rich Eisen and all these other legacy sports broadcasters that had come through, that had come through ESPN. So, doing daily TV for like 5 straight years was an accomplishment. It was crazy, as I now see, now that I don't do daily TV, I just wonder, like, how did I do that for so long? Like, that's insane. So that was good. And then, even during the course of that time, winning my first Emmy, being able to do that, like, and to win an Emmy, not even in sports. I mean, I won that Emmy when former President Obama had a town hall about gun violence and particularly about police violence against Black folks. When he did that town hall, like, I was a part of the team. And so I was able to win an Emmy for that, of all things. It was like, oh, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Being invited to the White House a couple times when I was at ESPN during President Obama's presidency. That was like a big, like, you never know who's watching moment, because he watched our show and it was a big sports fan. ESPN was actually his release. So it was weird to be talking to the president about sports, and the first Black president, and to get, hugged by Michelle Obama and feel my soul leave my body. That was like, so those are good times. So like I've been able to be in some really amazing situations, accomplish a lot of really good things. And sometimes when I'm at a speaking engagement and they're introducing me, I'll be like, who are they talking about? I was like, oh, it's me. Like, that is crazy. So
the resume is long.
The resume is quite long. But, when you're in the thick of it, I can't say I often sit and think about my accomplishments.
Yeah.
Mostly you're on to the next thing, which I don't think is a good thing, actually. I think it's... You got to give yourself some time to give yourself some credit. Yeah. Because I don't think as women, especially as Black women, we definitely do not do that.
Which is why I have this segment.
Yes, exactly. To put
we don't speak on it.
We don't speak on it. Yeah. Maybe some of it is just because we are already on to the next thing. And we only operate of like in the mode of how can I get shit done. Yep. Not in the mode of, look at the shit I already got done.
Facts.
Yes, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate that.
Of course. Did you know that in the beginning of your career, did you know you were going to be a household name?
No. Oh, my God. I signed up for poverty. Are you kidding me? When I was in college, the average salary for a print journalist was $19,000 a year. That was the average salary. And I was like, oh, man.
Wow.
I am hustling backwards. But... it's the only thing that I loved and I was good at was writing. And so I was just like, well, if I ever get to make $50,000 in this job, man, I'm gonna be doing something. And I never made 19. I made 22. That was the lowest I made. And then within, my second job out of college, I was making $47,000 a year. So I thought I was way ahead of the curve. It's like, yes. And when I left that job, I was making, 65. So I was like, I've come up. Y'all don't know. I'm balling out here. And, it was, at that time, and I sort of am amused by how things have changed, but younger journalists get it now, and they expect to make money and be famous. I was like, who told y'all that? Like, it is
social media.
Social media did, but I don't think they realize that it's still very much a working class profession. Yeah. The majority, it's like 1% of us wind up on TV. And so they look at, maybe me or Stephen A. or some of the other journalists who are on TV and think like that is going to be me. And it could be you. Yeah. Not saying that it couldn't be, but that's a very small percentage of people. The majority of journalists are working for local media, at a local newspaper, local TV station, local radio. That is where the majority of people are working. And those are working class jobs. And some of them pay better than others for sure. But generally speaking, no, I didn't get in this to be rich, and I didn't get in it to be famous. I got into it for very corny reasons, is that I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to, as we used to say in journalism school all the time, I wanted to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
love that.
Yeah, that's the motto of journalism. Like,
yeah,
we, from the very inception, the whole point that journalism was ever invented was to hold the powers that be accountable. We're supposed to represent the voice of the people, and we are supposed to be the watchdogs of society. That's why I did it. I didn't do it because I thought that all this other stuff would come. I had no clue that any of this was even possible.
Yeah.
And even now, despite, me having some name recognition, I'm still in it for the same reasons I was in it when I got to college at 17. It's like, I'm still in it for the same reasons. It's like, we have to hold these people to account, because if we don't, we won't be a functioning society. The reason why we are a democracy is because of a free press. And that is integral to how we function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched on this earlier. Did you know that you were going to be, I don't want to say poster child, but you are the face of Black women in sport. Like, you are the person that kind of paved the way and kind of the person we draw on to inspire us, right? We feel comfortable going into boardrooms, expressing our opinions and wearing our natural hair and being unapologetically ourselves. Did you know that you were in the process of, like, being that person for us?
No, because I guess I was too busy looking at the other people I admired and thinking like, oh, they're inspiring me. Robin Roberts is inspiring me. So I'm like, and as you're in motion, as I said, you don't take a lot of time to reflect, and you are unaware that the things that you're accomplishing are rubbing off on other people until you get around them. Until I talk to, other women in the business, and they're like, I watched you do this and that. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know. But it's important to keep in mind, because as I navigate and as I do things, I have to operate with the sense that somebody's watching and somebody's drawing something from what I'm doing. Now, I determine whether what they're drawing is negative or positive, right? Okay. And so it's a responsibility that I take very seriously. And that's why I like to be as available as I can to other Black women, other women, period, in the business who may need support, advice, help, whatever. I try to make myself as available as possible, because that tribe was a big reason why I made it as far as I have. Because there's just so many forces that are against you as a woman in this business, and as a Black woman in particular. And the only way to really fight the forces is that you have to constantly stay rooted in your purpose. And when you have good people around you, they help you do that. Yeah. And I was very lucky, because I had some early mentors, early women early in my career who gave me that that sense of confidence and self-esteem that I could really do this job. So by the time it got to a point where, people were doubting me, or, I was the token hire and all that other stuff, I had too much confidence by then. It was too late.
Thanks.
They should have got to me early. They did not get to me early enough. So I was able to use that as like really good armor and protection around me.
So let's talk a little bit about your transition out of ESPN. What were some of the emotions that you were experiencing upon your departure?
Mostly it was relief.
Yeah.
And look, ESPN's the best job I ever had. I was there for 12 years. But it was time. It was like, I felt like our relationship had run its course. It was time for me to move on to other things that I wanted to do. And I also wanted to be able to have more agency in the things that I was doing. When you work for an ESPN or any company that large in the media field, is that they own a lot of what you do. You have to ask permission to do stuff. All the time. And I got tired of sending those emails. And it's particularly my last year, with all the controversial things that had happened, that process became even more cumbersome. Because they were so afraid about what might be written about something I said or did, and they were just very scared in that moment. And I realized too that whatever was going to be my next season of my career, I couldn't do it with scared people. Couldn't do it. And it's hard to really find people who are courageous, who make decisions and stick by them, who will have the stomach for the fights you're trying to, have. It's hard to find. And so it just made me want to be more strategic once I left. So like the number one emotion was relief when I left, and number two was excitement, because I got to start with a blank canvas and draw what I wanted my next 15 years in my career to look like. I got to pick where I wanted to live, which I hadn't had a chance to do ever in my professional career. I always went where the work was, because that's journalism. You go where the work is. And so I was like, oh my God, I get to I get to move on personally and professionally, because at the time I was dating my husband. I mean, we were serious, but we were not engaged. And we had been long distance for 4 years. We had been long distance the entirety of our relationship. And so once I was done with ESPN, I was like, babe, where do you want to move? Like, he was living in Myrtle Beach at the time. I had been in Connecticut, and then I briefly moved to DC, and I was like, so what we doing? Are we doing this? So then it was like, oh my God, now I'm able to take the next step in my career and in my relationship.
Yeah. So
we moved in together, and then he proposed like 2 months later. So it was just like, it was a really exciting time in my life, because I felt like I was really moving with purpose. The people I was talking to in terms of work, the first job I took was being a writer at the Atlantic, publication I had respected for so long. And, Ta-Nehisi Coates, it's where he cut his teeth, was at the Atlantic. And there was so many writers there I respected, and they were still doing great journalism, invested in journalism.
What's poppin', guys? It's JG here from Blowing Smoke. If you're a fan of fun, insightful, and breakthrough conversations, then be sure to check out and subscribe to the Blowing Smoke Podcast, a show that covers life experiences and firsthand testimonies from some of the biggest names in your favorite industries, and all that brought to you exclusively by the Revolt Podcast Network, anchored in hip-hop, powered by creators.
And I could return to my first love. So, that was the first job I took out the gate. And then creating a podcast, because I kind of miss interviewing people and talking to people and finding out about their paths and journeys, their failures, their exhilarating moments. I miss doing that, because when you're on TV, you have 5 or 6 minutes to talk to somebody, and then that's kind of it. So I wanted another platform that kind of fed that part of it. And then I wanted to get into film and TV production, just because the ability to tell a good story is very underrated, a very difficult skill. And it's something I thought Hollywood needed. So, it wasn't, for the first time in 5 years, being on camera was not the focus. And I was more than okay with that. And that's not to say that I don't love doing TV. I do. But I knew, based off my experience at ESPN, I could only probably do TV on certain terms.
Yeah.
And I was able to find it. Me and Carrie Champion, we had our own show on Vice. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
And we just did all kind of crazy stuff that I'm like, they let us do this on TV. This is wild. It was, drinking Hennessy shots. It was, we were acting up on that show, and it was a blast to do. And, then going through the experience with CNN Plus, where the show we had, they gave us never aired, but it was a great job, because they still had to pay that contract out. I just wasn't working. I was like, oh. All right. I can't say I'm disappointed our show did there, but it's not a bad consolation prize to get paid for not doing anything.
Was there ever a part of you during that transition process? So you talked a little bit about how you were always with these big monumental companies, right? You had these big names behind you. Was there a part of you that was a little afraid during the transition process, because it's like, it's no longer Jemele Hill with ESPN. Now it's, Jemele Hill, and I have to create a name for myself.
Yeah, it does cause you to shift. Whereas the machine at ESPN is gonna carry you, right? And now I have to be not being with them, I have to be more strategic about how I partner, who I align with, how my name is out there.
Yeah.
And, obviously maintaining an audience is difficult, because it's so many things that pull at people's attention spans. And but I underestimated the amount of people that were interested in things I had to say and things that I was doing, which was good, you know, because it probably caused me to work a little harder. And then, like, the first real indication of that was, like, when I got my book deal. Like, I didn't expect my book to go to auction, and it did. And I had multiple publishers who were bidding for it. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, y'all really care? Because I didn't want to do a memoir. I did not. I mean, I wanted to be an author. I wanted to write fiction. I did not want to write about myself. But that was what people were interested in. And I was like, well, it's your money. Okay. You know, so that was, I guess, you know, being at the other legacy media corporations, even though I have my own name and my own identity, so much of it is intertwined with the company you work for. But now it's just me.
Yep.
You know, and that was both exhilarating and it was frightening, because you do wonder, like, do I have the ability to sell in the same way that I did when I was at ESPN? And it turns out those fears were unfounded. There was a lot of interest. I got to do a lot of really cool stuff. Still am getting to do a lot of really cool stuff. And so, but yeah, I mean, I thought about this, and this is something I try to relay when other people are wondering what their next move is in the business. And if you think about it, when you are working for, you know, corporations, legacy places, or whatever have you, you're not going to work harder for them than you would yourself. So it's like, why not bet on you? You know what you're capable of because you're you, right? You know that you're not going to shortchange yourself. You're not going to cut corners on yourself, right? So your odds of success are way higher than you think. You just have to get over the fear of, like, the fear. Mostly I don't think it's a fear of failure. It's a fear of success. Yes. It's like you have to get over that part of it and realize that everything you have done in your career has prepared you for the moment to be on your own. And that really was driven home to me within the first 6 months. Like, oh my God, everything I've just done in journalism the last 25 years prepared me for this. I am over prepared for this moment, if anything. And that gave me a lot of confidence in terms of how I move, the type of deals and partnerships I struck. It just gave me a tremendous amount of confidence.
Tell us a little bit about the podcast network.
So, you know, I started at Spotify with my own podcast, you know, just Jemele Hill, Unbothered. And I was not thinking about a podcast network at all. And then, you know, 2020, such a tumultuous year for this country. Just obviously we're knee deep in the intensity of the pandemic. And then you have the tragedies of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. You know, that was within the first 6 months of 2020. And all these corporations, Spotify included, were coming to, you know, the Black community, or messaging specifically to Black people, like, hey, we care. We want to invest. We want to. I was like, oh, y'all writing checks? Got an idea for you. So it was that moment. It was wanting to take advantage of the fact that there seemed to be a concerted effort to really try to cultivate and amplify Black voices. And I was looking around the landscape of, like, where just Black women were. You know, we had Stacey Abrams out there saving democracy. You know, we got Lupita and Angela Bassett out there saving Wakanda, you know, and Shuri too. And we were just in this mode of either savior or mule. Like, we just had the responsibility of everything. And so I could feel that. And I'm like, we're more than that. We're more than saviors. We're more than mules. We have complexities about us that people don't even bother to uncover or bother to ask about, and that we have a hard time even allowing to breathe. And so I wanted to create a product for Black women, where Black women were the talent, the producers, like soup to nuts, Black women. You know, because there's a lot of things that are created for us. well, we ain't involved in none of the decision making
Yes.
at all. You know, we might be the front facing talent for it, but behind the scenes is a whole different picture. And I didn't want that to be this. So I went to Spotify. I asked them to help me create a network for Black women, a podcast network for Black women, because, you know, podcasts, the listenership was also exploding during this time. And it felt like the spectrum of who Black women were not represented. So I wanted a network that addressed how we worship, how we laugh, how we love, how we relate to our families, how we are in relationship with our friends, all of those things. And so that's what I did. And, you know, it was a really big learning experience. One, I said this in college that I never wanted to be in charge of people again. I was like, I don't want to run anything ever again, but sometimes duty calls and you have to do it. But I learned a lot as a leader, went through a lot of growing pains. Certainly learned a lot in terms of when you have something that ambitious that the people you're in partnership with don't fully understand, there has to be a level of trust there. That where you may not understand it, but you got to at least trust me to do it, right? And there were times where Spotify and I were not on the same page with that.
Okay.
But we were able to still produce. You know, we went through growing pains together because as a company, not just with my network, they were going through a lot of growing pains because they made it their number one priority to overtake Apple in podcasting. And, you know, they went through some hits and some misses for sure. And so it was like I was kind of caught up in their growing pains as well and was part of that. And, I mean, they were well-intentioned, but there were definitely some things I think they would agree that could have been done better. But nevertheless, I mean, we were still able to license the Black Girl Bravado podcast, which is tremendous. You know, as they call it, homegirl wellness.
I love that.
Yeah, homegirl wellness. They talk about relationships, mental health, so many different things in an honest way. And because they're best friends, you feel that energy, you feel that relationship. So, you know, Brittany in Germany, excellent hosts, wonderful people. So happy that we were able to platform them. They already had it in existence, but, you know, we were able to give them the marketing support and other things that they needed. And an original podcast that we had, Sanctified, that was hosted by LaVon Briggs and Deborah Joy Winans. And this was about how Black women worship, like what that looks like for us in this age we're in this country where, you know, we are making more money than we've ever had. We're more independent. And the traditions of the church, we are breaking through those seams. Yeah. And, like, what does that look like for us? And I'm so proud of that podcast because they were talking about very difficult issues, abortion, where the transgender community fits in the church, you know, just all kinds of things along the spiritual spectrum. And they're funny, you know, they're talking about, you know, purity culture and sex and all this stuff. And I love the conversations that they had. They were very inclusive and warm. And again, a lot of it was very funny and entertaining. So, you know, really proud that we were able to get that off the ground.
I agree. They are very funny. This is a great show.
Yeah, they're really funny.
Can we talk a little bit, and you started to talk about it, your relationship? I would love to hear more about it. When did you all get married?
So we got married in 2019. We met in 2014. And we met, obviously, when I was still at ESPN, and then I was doing His and Hers. And we both went to Michigan State. We're both from Detroit. But my husband's younger than me. Okay. Because I'm a cougar.
So did y'all?
I'm kidding. I got 5 years on him. I got 5 years.
Did you meet at Michigan?
We met at Michigan State's homecoming, but we didn't go to college at the same time. Like, I had left when he got there, and so I had already graduated. And so we met at homecoming. We met at the Black Alumni tailgate. Okay. Yeah, because I was Grand Marshal of the homecoming parade that weekend, and part of your responsibilities as Grand Marshal is you go around to different tailgates and you shake hands and kiss babies and talk to people. I mean, I was going to the Black Alumni tailgate anyway because that's where I usually went. So I just went there, and when I was a adjunct, when I worked at the Free Press, and covered Michigan State football and basketball. I was an adjunct professor adjunct instructor, at Michigan State. So I co-taught a sports journalism class, and I saw one of my students, which now it sounds weird to say, but I saw one of my students who happened to be one of his good friends. I know, because everybody's like, "How much older?" I'm like, that much older than him. I was teaching this class in my 20s, by the way, and so yeah, like me and this student, we were talking. And we'd always had a good relationship. And then up walked my future husband. And I was like, oh, he kind of fine. Like, who is that? But I didn't get his number or anything like that. We just kind of left it there. And I'd never seen him before. And I'd been coming to homecoming for a couple years at that point. And later on, they had a party. The Black alumni had a party. I went to it, catch up with a lot of old friends. And I saw him. He was there. And I was like, okay. Now, I've seen him twice in one day. Okay. And Michigan State is a big school. I mean, we have 40,000 students that went there. So the odds of you seeing somebody again, even if you are, at the black people stuff, like you still may not. Like, again, I've been going to homecoming, hanging out with the black folks, had never seen him before, and he had been there. And, it was one of those, I saw him across the room, he saw me, we sort of gravitated to each other.
You locked eyes like the movies?
He said, we did, we locked eyes. And he, as he would later tell me, he said, you looked at me like, if I didn't come over there and talk to you, it was going to be a problem. I was like, because it probably was, and we exchanged information. And
well, wait, who shot their shot? He walked up to you?
I think we sort of walked toward each other.
Okay.
It was mutual, definitely. And I don't remember, we exchanged information. Like, I got his number, he got mine, because at that point, I mean, I hadn't turned 40 yet, but I'm in my late 30s. I'm like, what's your number? Basically, so we exchanged numbers. He called me the next day, and we talked, and it just, like, it kind of went from there. And we had our first date maybe like 3 weeks later, because we found out that we were both, I was going to a conference in California, and he was like, oh, I got to go to California too for work. And I was like, oh, well, I was like, are you going to be in LA? He's like, no. I was like, no, I'm not either. I was like, I'm going to be in Orange County. He's like, I'm going to be in Orange County. It just so happened, like, his company was headquartered like 15 minutes from where this conference was. Oh, wow. And so we had our first date, which is also where we got married. We wound up getting married there too. We dated long distance for 4 years, got engaged in 2018, got married in 2019, and been happy all the way since.
Love every part of this. Okay. How did you know that he was the one?
It was a couple different ways.
Okay.
One is that because I know that many of my, female friends, and maybe the same for you, like when you're in sort of high-powered careers, you run into a lot of insecure men, right? Mm-hmm. That cannot really handle that, and then add to the fact that I'm on TV every day, mm-hmm. At this point. And so
you probably have people shooting they shot.
You know what? It wasn't so much, that. I mean, it was just the visibility of it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then I think that can be hard to deal with, because you're going to attract a different type of limelight. Yeah. Yeah. And so, but I knew just based off the type of person he was, like, he's very straightforward. I loved his sense of humor. That was another big thing. Like, and I love that he was so secure in who he was. So our first ESPYs was like a test, right? Because I had never taken a date to the ESPYs, number one. And, there it's like, you got a whole red carpet, we doing a show from there. Like, you're going to be in some high-powered circles, if you will. And we went to LeBron threw an after party, and we went to his after party, and it's like Kendrick Lamar is there, and Future, and like all these NBA players are there. And it's, even though it's like all this star power in the room, like it's like a pretty intimate environment. So like you in conversation with somebody who's 6'8", more than likely, and he wasn't on no fanboy. Like, he was just himself. And I was like, I knew he would be like this.
I love that.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're in sports, so
yes.
Like, it's like you may take, because a friend of mine who also is in sports, she unfortunately had this experience. Like, she took someone to, a similar high profile event, and they acted a total fool. and she was so embarrassed. And like, I mean, I don't need you running up to LeBron like, can I get a selfie? Like, I don't need all that. I don't need all that. Right? Like, it might be a picture at some point, but you got to be more covert about it, right? You cannot be up in there like, please listen to my demo. And so yeah, we connected. Like when I saw that, I was like, I knew it. I knew it. And at that point, when we went to the ESPYs, like we were dating, but we hadn't put a label on it.
Okay.
We weren't like we're boyfriend and girlfriend or anything like that. And his birthday was a few weeks later, and he came to visit me, and I was just like, I mean, and you know, people think he's joking when he says this, but I asked him to go with me. I did. I was just like, you know what? I was like, at that point, we had been seeing each other for like almost a year. It wasn't quite a year. It was like maybe 2 or 3 months shy. And I was like, you know, I'm ready to do this. Are you ready to do this? He had kind of already told me he was ready to do it. He was just more or less waiting on me. But I was just like, I'm ready for it to be, you know, just us, like, you know, in this relationship together. And, you know, let's see what happens. But I knew then that, like, he was definitely going to be somebody that I was going to get quite serious about. And then just, like, the way he carried himself, his integrity, he's honest and truthful. And, like, I don't have to worry about where I stand with him. I don't have to guess how he feels. And
that is huge.
That is very huge. Like, he didn't do all those silly little game playing that sometimes can happen. And, like, that was never him. Yeah. And never has been him. It didn't start with me. Like, I think it's just the nature of who he is. Yeah. And, you know, because of that and 1,000 other reasons, I fell head over heels. I was like, this is, and he also brings out the best in me too. Yeah. Right. And I think there were other relationships where they let me get away with a lot. Right. But he checked me like, you know, you better than that. Right. And I'll be like, you right. Dang. You know, so yeah, it was all those things.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. And you know, one thing I did love too. I love that I was the age I was when I got married. Like, I was 42, I think.
That was my follow-up.
Oh, was it? Okay, all right. All right. You know what? I'm going to let you ask the question before I leap off into a tangent.
Well, here's the thing. And how are we looking on time? Cause I
know I'm good. Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Yep. Here's the thing. So our homegirl is going viral today. She's guest hosting on The Breakfast Club.
Oh, okay.
And it was a big debate about a statement that someone had said where she advised for women to, you know, get married early.
Ebony
in college.
Williams.
Yes.
Yes, Ebony K. Williams. Yes, because she said, like, I saw the comments. Yes. And I think on one of the posts, I think I commented myself because she, and, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, she said, like, when you're in college, you should not be just trying to get, you know, a degree, but an MRS as well. Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah, because that's like, you know, based off how, on her perspective, that's when you're probably around the most people your age, like-minded goals, you in college, most black men who are, you know, college age, you're going to be around them, you know, if that's who you desire today. Like, your pool is there. Right. And that's the best it's going to get. Right. And I was like, ooh. Well, that's something.
And then in addition to that, what kind of got me was she mentioned, like, the older we get, our market value decreases from marriage. Yes. So I would love to get your perspective as someone who got married in their, I believe you said 40s. Yeah, yeah. I would love to get your perspective on that.
So I don't believe that. And, you know, here's the thing. It's not the most concrete thing to say is that it happens when it happens. And I know nobody wants to hear that, right? Like, we want the exact science of it. Like, 27, 34, that's your prime marrying age. And, you know, we want to get real scientific with it. But let me just say this. One thing I think, a conversation that does need to be had, and a friend of mine who is a academic advisor at a college told me this, is because in the professions that she talks to young women often about, the ones they're pursuing, like medicine, law, things that will keep you wrapped up in school a long time. Yeah. She advises all of them to consider freezing their eggs. And that is a conversation I do think a lot of my friends I don't necessarily regret it because I got to be honest. Like, children were pretty much off the table for me for a long time.
Okay.
So, like, that was never my mindset anyway. But that is a conversation we should probably have earlier.
Yeah.
Is like, you know, if you know for sure you want to have children and you also want to pursue your career and pursue it in a major, unapologetic, full throttle way,
yes.
you should probably think about freezing your eggs,
Yeah.
especially if you are fortunate enough to work for a corporation that may cover that from a cost standpoint. You might get good enough health insurance where it may cover that. You should definitely think about that much earlier than most of us actually think about it. You know, in my 20s, I didn't even know it was a possibility. I didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
Like, really, I didn't really even think or conceptualize, like, oh, maybe you should think about doing this because later on, when you do want to have a baby, maybe that will be the case. So that conversation needs to be had. Now, this idea of our declining value, and I because she related it specifically to our childbearing ability, and I think that's where the declining value idea came from. I just think it's very dangerous as women to get in that mindset of like, I have to make it happen here. If most of us think about who we were in our 20s, we weren't ready to be married.
Facts.
I was not in college. I was a whole fool. Okay. I was immature emotionally. I'm like, I'm just trying to make sure this ramen ain't burned. Like, I ain't got time to be looking for a husband too. I'm trying to graduate, you know? And I think Black women especially get made to feel bad or unworthy more than anybody else. It's like always something with us. It's always like we're not desirable enough. We're not pretty enough. We're too ambitious. We either too much or too little at the same time. I don't understand this,
Yes.
right? And I just think it's a really dangerous mindset for us to have that it has to happen a certain way
Yeah.
and at a certain time. Otherwise, we are discardable. I mean, my best friend from college, I was just her maid of honor. We the same age. She just got married last month. Or actually, we're in September. Sorry, she got married in July.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it does happen,
Yeah.
and it can happen at different times. So no, I don't buy into the declining value. And I think, you know, a lot of the reasons why we are seeing the marriage decline rate, it has to do with a lot of external factors that didn't exist before. I mean, you have to realize it wasn't until the early 70s that women could get a credit card without a man's signature, right? So once we left the traditional, you know, like I know we like to point to like our grandparents or even our parents as being like, well, why did they stay together so much longer? I'm sure your mama loves your daddy. But financial stability, the only upward mobility we had was through marriage. And when that changed, well,
Yeah.
it changed.
Yeah.
And now a lot of us do not define our self-worth through marriage. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Because we figured out through life experience, through just living life. Like a lot of us were like, you know, my only purpose on this earth is not just to be married and have kids. Like I actually want other things.
Can you say that again?
It's
please.
true. I mean, it is. I mean, I know like we get judged for that,
Yeah.
for feeling that way, but it's a lot of us that don't want that actually as a dream. And I think that's fine. And those of
Yeah.
us who do, you are free to pursue that in whatever way you feel like will make you happy. But I really do feel like this next generation of women, and it's bled over into the generation that I'm a part of, they just don't feel that way. Like that's the defining characteristic that they need to have. Like, I got to get married or else, you know, whatever. And listen, I always just feel like what's for you is for you.
Absolutely.
I met my husband when I was supposed to meet him.
Exactly.
If I'd have met him any sooner, it might have been disaster for both of us.
Exactly.
So,
Because I believe in the divine timing of God.
there it is.
Like-
What do they say all the time in church? Is like, our time is not his time.
Exactly.
That's the way it goes. You know?
Exactly.
I wish I had a better, more concrete, like, hey, it's gonna happen October 2025, but like, it's not like that. And I
Yeah.
do believe that as long as you are happy with you and you work on being happy with you and you making you complete, the rest will come.
Absolutely.
Because the best way to me you can prepare yourself to meet that person that will eventually be your lifetime partner, the best way you can prepare for them is to make sure that you're good, is to make sure that you are fulfilled and that you don't depend on the other person to fulfill you all the time. I mean, they certainly add to your life. My husband has added so much to my life. I can't imagine life without him, but I didn't need him to be happy.
Come on.
Right?
Yes.
I didn't need him to be happy. I was already happy. he made me happier.
Yeah.
You know, and he renewed me and restored me in some ways that were like really important, but I wasn't dependent on that. And I think men get really annoyed and probably offended when they hear women say, I don't need a man. But they need to underline the word need. You need to breathe. You need water.
Yes.
And needing a man is different than wanting a man. I wanted a husband because I wanted this husband, right? But I wasn't going to wither and die if it didn't happen, right? I was like, I love him to pieces, but like, you know. So I think the part that men of maybe this generation and the generation, the next one, what they're struggling with is not feeling needed. They're struggling with that because when you take away the financial, you know, a lot of them, when I hear them sometimes, not all of them, you know, I don't profess, I'm not a man, so I can't speak for them, but at least my perspective based off how I hear some of them talk is that they need to feel needed, but they don't understand the way we need them is not the way they're used to providing. Right? They're used to, and that's not to say we don't still desire security, financial stability. Of course, we still desire those things. But we want emotional support.
Yes.
We want somebody that we can truly fall apart in front of. Because as Black women, we got to hold it together at all times. We want a space where we don't. That is like the biggest need that they can feel. And I think they overlook that part of it. And they think of like, oh, well, she got a great job. She making a lot of money. She don't need me. Nah, bruh. We do. We just don't need you for the things you feel like it's your only role to provide. And I think that's the part that they miss. But because, financially, and, you know, women are, I mean, Black women, we're the most educated group of people in the country now. We're earning more advanced degrees than virtually any other group. And it's like, because so much has changed societally for women in terms of academics, earnings, you know, equality, it's like that's going to have an impact on how we view marriage. You know, we don't view it as the thing that needs to complete us. But, you know, a lot of us still want it, so it's like, it's not that. But, I mean, I like to feel like our value only increases as we get older as opposed to going the other direction. It's not just about physically us being able to bear kids. It's about a lot more beyond that.
I agree. Yes to all of that. Okay. Note to self, go to homecoming.
Listen, you know, and that's the other thing too. It always happens when you least expect it. You know, I had been in a lengthy relationship before, and I had been single maybe about 2 years. And so I was in my, you know, my soft girl, hot girl combination time. I was like, I'm be out here. I don't want a man. I'm just going to be living for me. And here he come, you know. I was just like, I don't have to make any decisions based off of a relationship. I can just make decisions for me and not think about nobody else. I was fully embracing this time in my life. And he was too, because he was like, I was not looking for a girlfriend, you know. And so
I love that.
You know, you make plans and God laughs. That's what happens.
I love that. Okay, these are my last 2 questions for you. Number 1, how do you define success?
You know what? It's funny because I think this is just a product of being young. You define it very narrowly. I mean, the most narrow definition I ever had of success was making $50,000 a year. Because I felt like 50 was some benchmark. I don't know where that came from. I just felt like it was some very... you know, very significant benchmark. But then, you know, as I began to accomplish more things and rise in my career, success felt, I couldn't feel it because in my mind, I was always on to accomplishing the next thing. So I don't even know if I can give you a true definition of what it feels like because I still feel so much in the trenches. You know, I know people will look at some of the things that I've done and say, oh, no, you're successful. I've been able to accomplish some things for sure. But I guess I thought in my mind success would mean that I got to rest or I got to take the foot off the gas. And I'm so far away from there that I don't know what it feels like. But it didn't feel like what I thought it would. You know, even when I had my own daily TV show on ESPN, and even when I was hosting SportsCenter, it's like we were just so in the grind of it that I didn't ever get to come up for air and say, oh my God, I'm the 6:00 p.m. anchor on SportsCenter. It was always like, so what's tomorrow's show about? Okay. Do we have this video? Do we have that? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it was always on to the next. And I'm trying my hardest to stop doing that because I need to be able to appreciate where I am in the moment. So in the moment, I feel successful because I'm doing and accomplishing things that were never even on the table. Mm-hmm. You know, the problem wasn't that I didn't dream. The problem was like I clearly underestimated myself. I didn't dream big enough.
Wow.
I didn't do it. I grossly underestimated myself. Yeah. And because of that, I have not allowed myself to feel as successful as I probably should. Mm-hmm. You know, I guess maybe when it's all said and done, I will. But like, just the fact that I can go to a bookstore, my book is there. Yeah. I dreamed about that when I was a little kid, and I still like when I go to the airport, especially when it first came out in October. And the paperback's going to be released in October, so it'll be coming out soon. When I walked past and I saw my display, I was just like, I cannot believe that is me. Like that was a moment of success. Yeah. Like seeing that, especially in the airport, like I was like, wow, there's my book. It actually happened. But I'd like to just be more intentional about trying to feel that feeling of success. But it's not a bad problem to have. I imagine all ambitious people are that way. Yeah. You know, I mean, I read that Drake is about to break Michael Jackson's record for most #1 singles, I believe. And I bet to Drake, I bet the success doesn't feel like what he thought it would feel like. Right. I bet it doesn't. You know, he might be still thinking about, because I tend to do this. You still think about the things you didn't do right. Mm-hmm. You know, and so as opposed to concentrating on the 90 things you did do right. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm working on it. Okay. Is my answer. I'm working on it.
Okay. So here at the Success Playbook Pod, we know that success is on the other side of failure, right? So we have a theory called the art of taking L's. So I would love to hear a little bit more about maybe your biggest L you've taken and how it thrusted you further on your success journey.
Yeah, I think some people would probably characterize maybe the last two pivots I made as being a quote-unquote L. But I don't really see it that way because I always feel like even when it's a momentary failure, it's getting you to somewhere else. So when I left SportsCenter, I left because I didn't like the job. There was a lot of noise around that kind of job. You know, SportsCenter is ESPN's baby. It's their company legacy is through that show, and there's a lot of hands on your show. And so there's a lot of creative fights that we were having with upper management, and then it was a different management that took over. And and especially with all the things that happened with the whole Donald Trump controversy, it just kind of made it a little bit of an unbearable experience. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to come to work every day fighting for the things that I was fighting for. It was just really exhausting. So I was contractually obligated to do the show. I had to lift that part of my contract to get off of it. And, you know, people just love trolling me about being kicked off SportsCenter. That was not the case. I chose to leave and chose to leave in the first year of my deal on top of that. So I had 3 more years left of that if I wanted it. And but it felt like the time was over. And more importantly, it was a really good teaching lesson about what I didn't want. Because that's very valuable. It's as valuable as figuring out what you do want, is figuring out what you don't want. And I was like, I don't want that. Yeah. Okay, if I'm going to do daily TV, it won't be like this. And, you know, then recently I ended my relationship with Spotify. And, you know, so the podcast network I talked about is in, you know, sort of limbo, if you will. Mm-hmm. But I left because, you know, it felt as if, you know, Spotify, a lot of what they wanted to do had changed. Their mission changed. And I don't think our missions were really aligned anymore. And so, you know, I asked them to get out of my contract because, like, I I felt like where they were was not where I was, and there were a lot of big things I really want for this network that I want for my own podcast. And I'm just, I'm not sure if they were the right home. Like I had a wonderful time and a wonderful experience with them. And even at times where there was tension, I mean, I felt like we were able to work through it in a productive way. But it just wasn't the place for me, anymore. And so some people would say, like, oh, there's another major media corporation that you're leaving. And I'm like, yeah, but I have to be in a place where I feel like I can be not just authentically me, but I feel like that they will trust me enough to deliver what I'm supposed to deliver. That trust part is really important. And I kind of need you to have a stomach for certain things, for some real fights. If people have not figured this out by now, anytime you decide to invest in black people and decide to invest in black women, somebody's not going to like it. And if not just one person, a lot of people ain't going to like it.
Yeah.
And to me, unless you are willing to stand in the paint, keep your investment. Because, we don't need any people who want, at least I don't, at least behind me. And I'm not accusing, Spotify of this, but like just in general, like with however I move forward, it's like I don't need people who are only going to want to be in relationship with me when things are positive.
Yes.
When everybody is like cheering it on and it's 100% approval. I was like, no, the time when it's real is when people don't like it and you still willing to do it anyway. So that's important for me going forward. It's like, the people that you in the trenches with, you have to be sure they really in the foxhole with you.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people that put on like they would, and then when the trouble eventually comes or you hit a rough patch or a tension point, then you find out they're not. And so yeah, I mean, I think I don't look at either one of those, me leaving either one of these companies, as a failure. But sometimes you have to leave a place that may have the name, that may even have the money. You have to leave there in order to get to the place that is really going to allow you to fully be who you are. And so I'm all right with it, and I think if I hadn't had the practice of what I went through at ESPN, it would have been that much harder for me to leave Spotify when I saw, like, we're not as aligned as I think we are, or I think we should be, I should say. I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't had the ESPN experience. So even from leaving, what's the adage? Is like, God closes a door and opens a window. I believe in that. And so, already I feel very confident about where this next podcast home will be. And I've gotten great feedback in the marketplace. So I know it will be just a matter of time.
Well, we are rooting for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And trust me, I got a ton of stuff to keep me busy.
Yeah.
So I am not hurting for having things to do, that's for sure. But this next phase of Jemele Hill is Unbothered and the Unbothered Network, I want to truly make sure that it's in the place that matches it from a vision standpoint, from a support standpoint, because it's time to take things to the next level.
Love it.
Yeah.
And then the paperback book comes out.
Paperback book comes out October 9th. And, I guess on the subject of books, I'm also going to be writing a children's book. Talk about something I never expected to be doing. I am going to be writing a children's book.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So kind of finalizing that now and working on that. But yeah, I mean, I never expected that to be my audience, but it's coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, where can we keep up with you?
Well, luckily, I have a very complicated name on social media. It's just Jemele Hill. And I mean, I'm not shy about the things I'm working on, and probably the next maybe big thing that people will see, in addition, obviously, to the paperback, is the documentary that I'm executive producing, a Colin Kaepernick's documentary that's directed by Spike Lee.
Yep.
Hoping that you all should. I mean, I won't even say fingers crossed, because it definitely should. In 2024, you should be seeing that. So
I heard you talk about it on another podcast. I'm so excited for it.
I'm very excited for everybody to see it. It's like we in the trenches with it now, and I'm I think it's going to be extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Extremely powerful. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. The legend herself, Miss Jemele Hill.
Yo, Prime members, so check this out. We are here to talk about our favorite thing in the world, and that is Amazon Prime.
That's right. We all have different interests, but there's one thing that brings us together: Prime.
As members ourselves, we found ways to maximize our Prime benefits to get the most out of our passions.
From fast and free shipping, streaming of movies and music, and even exclusive deals and discounts, Prime has it all.
And what's great is that you can use all of these services to elevate your hobbies and interests.
Whether you're a bookworm, a fitness fanatic, or a gaming guru, Prime has something for everyone. I promise you that.
So go ahead, explore and indulge in all that Prime has to offer. We promise you won't be disappointed.
Time to get more out of whatever you're into. Prime. And that's that on that.